awesome.
Thank you, and welcome to another segment of the Jain Irrigation Training Series. Today, I'm Richard Restuccia, Vice President of Water Management Solutions for Jain, and today we're going to get into what we learned this past season from our water management services. You know, this was the first year any manufacturer offered hands-on water management services to customers in the ag industry. We think we learned a lot. We think our customers learn, and overall, what I feel is that it's been very successful. But more importantly, I think what matters is what our customers feel. So today we have Cunningham, the technical sales and project manager for Jain Monitoring and Control Products, and somebody who's been involved day to day for the last, 9-10 months in water management services, is going to help us understand what our water management services customers actually felt, thought, and how they benefited from water management services at Jain. So as you know, Connor is our technical sales manager, but he does a lot more for Jain than that. You know, he is a Fresno State grad. We were talking about the Bulldogs early on, lifelong resident of the Central Valley there, and has been involved in ag tech for a long time. I was starting a project in Fresno tomorrow. Connor would be my first call. I know I'd be getting the best information from somebody who really cared about my success. So Connor, welcome. Thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you so much for the kind words. I really do enjoy doing these webinars, and I'm very passionate about my day-to-day job. I really enjoy what I'm doing. I enjoy doing it here in the Central Valley, where I'm living and growing my family. So yeah, I really am excited to talk about today's topic because it's kind of taking it to that next level with, instead of just interacting with the product and then also interacting with the growers, but actually partnering a
So Connor, I've got a little bit of a screen freeze here right now. I'm not sure what has happened to Connor, or if he can still hear me, or if you can hear me. So Connor is frozen for all of us, and it looks like we lost Connor for a second. So we'll give Connor a moment to check back in. Thank you for those of you in the chat that have let me know that I'm still on. I appreciate that. And one of the things while Connor's dialing back in, and this will only take a second, I'm sure. One of the things I think was so unique about what Connor and the team did this year is that been looking around a little bit, and I saw a lot of people talked about water management service, and a lot of people talk about having water management services. And what we're talking about at Jain right now and today is about water management as a service. It's a lot more than just offering up a piece of equipment to somebody and saying good luck. It's really about the hands-on approach. So Connor, welcome back. Glad you made it back. I was just getting into the water management as a service versus water management product. So, but the first thing I wanted to do is just on a very broad level, Connor, how did it go this year?
Yeah, I would say, very broadly, can really be summed up in one statement. We had multiple users of WMS say that they were very happy with the service, which, okay, great. Jane's talking about their service that they did, and of course their growers are happy. But as you'll see, as we go through some of the information and we talk about how the growers were using it and why they were using it, we'll see that statement is very much true. And we even have some examples here at the end of the presentation where I'll actually have some physical examples from growers' accounts where we show, hey, this is where we made an impact. And this is very real data that people were using to help work around challenges that arose. So that's a little teaser. So for everybody that's watching, if you stick around towards the end of the presentation, we'll have some actual aids to show some examples of some of the data that was actually being collected through water management services.
Yeah, I love it. I call it Prove It Day.
That's right.
We said a lot of positive things about water management services, but here's the time to really hear from the customer. This is how we prove it that it did help them. So, and before we jump into that, I just, help us understand the difference between, water management products and this actually being water management as a service.
Right, definitely. I think that's kind of where the industry is shifting a little bit. A lot of the ag tech products have kind of moved towards that phrase, those hot button words, the water management tools, which they are. And don't get me wrong that there are a lot of great water management tools out there. But the difference between what we're doing versus water management tools and a subscription service that you would sign up for is we take it one more step. And you may have hit on this while I was away, but also that we're actually coming alongside and we're having an open dialogue, and we're basically drafting recommendations week after week and having an open dialogue with our growers saying, hey, this week, based off of the weather, based off of your soil moisture status, data coming in from the satellite, et cetera, here's the number of hours that we recommend that you should run. So it might not be full ET because your soil moisture profile is so full that we can actually draw from that bank a little bit. So it's actually taking into account our expertise on the Jain team, and based on our knowledge of how the technology works and how to interpret the data, that sets it apart from just some tools that you can purchase and then pay a subscription fee for a portal to access that data.
Yeah, I was thinking back to one of your customers who came on and did a webinar a few months ago, and he was saying in the past, right, that he bought other technology, and it was like, here's your product, see you later, good luck. And what he really appreciated was the not just the follow up and the training, but the active participation. He really felt like Jain and the team were vested in his outcome, and that this was a team event. And if he succeeded, we felt like we succeeded. And if he didn't, then it wasn't good for anybody. And that really came across well from that customer. And I understand he had a really good year. So.
Yeah, a lot of our growers receive different types of benefits. There was some overlap between them, which was great, but it was also really unique to be able to see the differences between them as well, which made it a lot of fun for me personally, because being able to work with each one of these farmers and growers, it was great to see the whole idea of, hey, why did you sign on in the first place? Then go through the entire season and then say, okay, what was it that you really appreciated about that? Did we achieve what you originally signed on to do? Something else happened. So that was really interesting. And, going back to the whole concept of ag tech, a lot of times in the space, a lot of people are very focused on savings, whether that's through water or through labor, which those things can be achieved. And some of our growers that participated in this service did actually see some savings. But we also saw that there were some people that actually ended up applying more water and received benefits by applying more water when they thought that they would have needed to put on less. And it actually ended up resulting in better quality at the end of the season here.
Yeah, that's so interesting, Connor, because in a year with the drought and all the pressure on water management, I know everybody felt like, if I turned my sprinklers on at the house, I knew people were watching over my shoulder. What's he doing? Is he waiting? Right. So there was so much pressure to save this year that I could see that everybody would be inclined to underwater, right? Which we know is equally bad for your crops or your landscape as overwatering.
Right. Yeah. And, one of the growers that we worked with actually said it really well, was it's not just about knowing when, but also the right amount too, because maybe you need to put on a little bit more, but there still is that upper threshold that we don't want to pass, because we don't want to also hurt them by, some crops are sensitive to having what they call wet feet. Grapevines are a great example of that, where you can push a lot of water down there, but you don't want it to sit down there for too long, because you don't want to have that wet feet that they call and create that rot as well.
Right. So, well, the anticipation's killing me. Let's, what did you hear from some of the customers?
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Enough about all the, the great things and the high fives, but let's actually get into the meat and potatoes. So, I just wanted this to be a very relaxed, very casual conversation about what we learned from the growers and some of the feedback that we got from them. And so, just based off of our time constraints, we'll just hit on a few of the growers, and then we'll make sure that we have some time for these visual aids here at the end. And so one of the first growers that I wanted to talk about was actually McFarland. So originally, Mr. McFarland decided that he wanted to sign up with WMS, not only because he liked the data, but he was also already getting data from various other sources. And so he wanted to benefit from using WMS because he would be able to vet his practices. And throughout the season, what he found was it actually made him feel really comfortable about what he was doing and knowing that what he was doing was right. And through that data, we were actually able to see that it supported that his practices were actually beneficial and that he was doing everything right just by looking at, hey, how much water did you apply to this block? Did you apply it the same in both of the sets? How does the vigor look between these two blocks? And it gave him a really different perspective, which was really interesting that I thought that he brought this up. He mentioned that having this new perspective or this additional perspective to what he was doing was really helpful, because if he needed to tweak something in the moment, he could, because he had access to this data, and it was frequent enough that he felt that he could make changes that he wouldn't normally make necessarily without as much notice.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Connor, because we had a customer at ET Water that was looking at university provided ET data on a daily basis.
Right.
I actually think it was historical, but we compared it to what our data showed, right? We get this data from the same place you and I do. And there was a couple days in which his number and our number, which was the more accurate number because it was taken on an hourly basis, it was as much difference as 80% some days.
Right.
So, right. So I run into these people who say, well, I get my data from here, and lots of times it's just historical data, and it's really different. So that's great that your customer saw that and figured that out.
Yeah, and he had used a competitor to our technology in the past and actually had a very different experience, very similar to what you were talking about, where their recommendations coming off of their devices, it was mainly just the program telling them, and those recommendations were very different than what he thought the fields would actually need. And so he called them up and had them come out to the field. They even dug up some soil samples and said, look, our system is right. And Mr. McFarland just knew it in his gut and knew based off of his experience that no, that's not right. And so he ended up parting ways with that competitor and found that our WMS was much more in line with what he thought was needed. And so he's very, very technical in how he approaches irrigation. So that meant a lot to me, that somebody who takes into account a lot of different data points and saw that our service and our recommendations were on par with what he thinks that his fields need.
Yeah, great point. The quality of the data you're getting really does matter.
Yeah, exactly. So, he's got a lot of experience, and some of the guys that he works with also have a lot of experience. And one of the things he said was, some of the guys he works with will say, well, just look at the trees. The trees look really good. And, Mr. McFarland's stance was, well, it doesn't mean that you can't put on a little bit more. Just going based off of how the trees look can sometimes be a trap, and you might not be able to get as much out of your crop as you thought you could.
Yeah. Very good point. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
I just want to remind everybody, we do have the Q&A open as well as the chat. So if you have some questions or comments, please put them in there and I'll get them to Connor as it's appropriate.
Yes, please do. We want this to be very open, very casual. So that'd be great. So another one of the growers that I worked with was Mountain View Almonds, Mr. Alvarez. And for him, he was also very big into data, which was really nice to start off with. And he was really into soil moisture probe data. But as we progressed throughout the season, he also really liked the satellite data that we brought and used as well. So he really latched onto that. And, as with all the growers that I work with, he's a very intelligent man. And he learned through the report, through talking to me, how to start to interpret that data. And it became a real major asset to him. And just like we had talked about here at the beginning of the presentation, was that he ended up watering more than what he thought that he would need to this season, which was kind of the opposite of what I think everybody was expecting to hear. But because of that, he had people actually stopping by and commenting on how good his trees looked at multiple points during the season, saying, hey, the bloom's on right now and it looks really good. Hey, it's coming up to harvest. Man, the trees look really good, getting ready for harvest. And then right now, as the trees are pushing out that new growth, getting ready for next season, he's also really pleased with how good that new growth looks. So we're both very eager to see what that looks like in this next season and how it's going to affect next year's crop.
I think that's a great story, Connor, for a couple of reasons. One, I really believe plant blindness is a thing, right? People really don't see trees and plants. They recognize that they're there, but they don't actually see them. So
right.
Oftentimes we have big battles when we're taking down a tree, right? Don't take it down, then you take it down, nobody even notices. So if somebody's actually saying to you, your trees look better, that's pretty great that somebody has that recognition. And I realize it was probably another expert in the industry was saying it, but it's still very notable.
Yeah, definitely. And the other aspect that he was really excited about. So one of the challenges, talking about challenges that we had to face, was Mr. Alvarez has a perched water table in his fields, and so we had to make sure that we differentially irrigated based on where that water table level was at. So when the water table was high, we wanted to keep it 3 feet and above. We wanted to keep our water there. And then when the water table dropped, we wanted to make sure to go ahead and fill up that entire root zone down to 4 feet. So having access and insight into that soil moisture data allowed him to see when he was able to get down to 4 feet, especially here in the post-harvest time when everything was really dry. He was able to watch and make sure that he was getting all the way down to 4 feet, which made him very happy, which made me very happy. And on top of that too, because he was putting on more water than he originally expected, he didn't have any issues with stress out there. And he also didn't have any mite issues this season.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I also think about, if I didn't have this data, if it wasn't accessible to me, how the heck would I know how deep I was watering? And chances are, right, when you don't know, you're going to overwater.
Right. Exactly.
And, if I didn't have a gas gauge in my truck and I was driving from here to Bakersfield, I'd be pulling over every hour or so and topping off the tank, right? Because I didn't want to run out. That'd be a disaster.
Exactly. And he got really good at interpreting the satellite data. That, another story here, he was actually hopping on Sunday night, getting ready for the coming week, and was looking at the satellite data for all his blocks. And he noticed that there was just a slight drop in some of the vigor for one of his younger blocks. So he called his PCA out because he suspected that there might be pest issues, and he had his PCA go and scout that one field. PCA came back and said, nope, it's not that there's a pest issue. It's because it's actually being overwatered. He was actually watering that young block the same as the neighboring block, which was much older. And so he was actually applying too much water in that instance. So it's a great example because 2 blocks side by side, he actually needed to apply more water, and the other one he needed to cut back a little bit. And he brought that vigor back up, and everything's been looking good since.
Yeah, that's pretty great, right? To be able to see that and see it's just not a one size fits all. It's different per block.
Right.
We have a couple of questions coming in, Connor. The first one is, I like the concept of partnering with growers. How is that different than just the sales pitch?
Oh, yeah. Okay, you beat me to it. I wanted to bring this up at the end.
I didn't, they did.
No, that's great. I'm really glad that people are paying attention and are thinking about this because, we do have existing users with our Jain Logic service, and it's all the same technology. The only difference is that we're providing this weekly recommendation. And what we found is our experience with Jain Logic and working with our growers with Jain Logic helped us to be able to rise up to challenges with WMS. And then flip side, a lot of the information and the patterns and the data that we analyze with WMS has actually helped us to be better account managers with our Jain Logic users. So just like with WMS, our Jain Logic users have access to their data through the dashboard. And we work very closely with our growers that are existing Jain Logic users. They just don't get that weekly report saying, hey, here's how many hours you need to irrigate. And by the way, check out this field. We think something might be going on. So that's a long-winded answer to that question there.
Yeah, no, that's great. And then other person's asking, what's a typical grower interaction look like? How do you determine if water management actually works or will fit for this grow?
Right, definitely. It's funny because the growers actually kind of come to that conclusion themselves, which is really helpful. And sometimes it comes down to very much like with Mr. Alvarez. Sometimes it helps to offer this up to growers who might be a little shy with data and tools like this. And that was kind of one of the aspects of WMS that wasn't really promoted as much or as heavily, where this service almost acts like a mentorship or like a coaching program to say, here's some of these tools that we have available to us today, and we can get a lot of really great information off of them. Let's come alongside each other and see how we can use this to help with our water management practices. So it's kind of basis by basis. Some people, they latch onto the technology right away. We have a number of our WMS users who are actually going to be converting to just standard Jain Logic users here at the end of the season, because now they understand the data. They feel that they can pull this information themselves. And then that will then leave us more room and more bandwidth to then be able to focus on new water management users coming in. So the other part of the question, sorry, was what does that typical interaction look like? And again, it's a little bit situational. At certain points of the year, some interactions will be, hey, grower A, here's your report for the week. Look this over. Let me know if there's any questions that you might have, where maybe grower B will say, hey, look this report over. I made sure to highlight some information in here that might be of importance to you. We saw something on field A that was catching our eye. And then we'll follow up with that grower and say, hey, by the way, I didn't hear back from you. I wanted to make sure that you saw this. Did you see what was going on here? And then we create that open line of communication, and the growers will also call us as well. So it's kind of situational.
Yeah, I'm amazed at that, right? And envious, right? Because let's just say you've got 4 water management customers that you're working with. You're a water manager for a grower, you'd get 1 season every year. But you got 4 experiences during 1 season, right? Different crops, different circumstances, different soils, different weather. Right. You guys learn so much from this. And I was just wondering, do other Jain people benefit from this, or is this just something that the water management group has?
Yeah, the nice part about the Jain team is we have a lot of experience behind us, and we have different experience too. So as we went through the season, there might be something that pops up in the data, or something that a grower might bring to me, and I'll say, you know what, I feel like I know what we're trying to accomplish here, but then I bring this to the team, and then we all come together, and I can rely on that support group that's behind me too. So it makes for a really strong service at the end of the day, because we have so many different walks of life coming in and being a part of that, the water management services, making sure that we're providing the top-notch level of service to the growers that have signed up for this program.
Yeah, that's a lot of power, right? You've got certified crop managers, you've got certified irrigators, you've got President of Jain, Eric Olson, who's pitching in. I know he's very vested in this and interested in general in making it work for our customers. So that's a lot of power there.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Yeah, no, and it really helps. And the interesting part that I think I found really intriguing through this whole season was we kind of present that aura when we go and meet with the growers, and a lot of the growers picked up on that and really challenged us to say, you seem like you know what you're talking about. Let's see how far we can take this. And what we found was, through WMS, Water Management Services, we didn't just provide irrigation recommendations every single week, but we actually were able to help to identify and work through some of the issues that were presenting themselves in the data, whether that was issues with the system or issues out in the field themselves. That I thought was a really interesting byproduct and a major asset to a lot of growers that were signed up for this service.
Yeah, that's great, Connor. How about any additional customer comments that you wanted to talk about as well?
Yeah, definitely. Just kind of wrapping up with Mountain View here, I really liked what he said, where, he said, water is probably the most important asset that we have available to us. Everything else can fail, but if you don't have water, then you don't have anything. And that doesn't necessarily mean using less either. That also means putting on the right amount at the right time. So I thought that was a really nice statement that we got from him, talking about the importance of water and water accuracy.
Yeah, that is great. We did have another question come in, Connor,
Sure.
and that is, do you offer more than just recommendations? And I'll take the just out. Do you offer more than recommendations based on your data analysis? Do you use anything else?
Yeah, we try to mainly stick to the data analysis. That doesn't mean that we don't go out to the field. There's been a number of times when I've also gone out to the field. Corey's gone out to the field. Damien's gone out to the field. Heck, even David Lindsay's also gone out to the field to go and see if we can try to also observe what might be going on out there. I've augured a number of soil samples to work in conjunction with the data that we're coming off of it. But this is not meant to be a program where it's something that might be taking the place of like a field scout or a PCA. This is very irrigation centric. So we want to make sure that we stay within our lane and don't stretch ourselves too far.
Yeah, great point. So for the season coming up, Connor, are you taking new customers?
Yes, definitely. We're very excited that now that we have this initial season under our belts and we've grown our team, we brought on Damien Jellin, and he is a very talented irrigation manager, and he's been a very major asset. And then we have myself, and then we have David Lindsay around, and then also Corey has been working on this on the side with his regular plastic sales as well. So we got a very strong team, and we're excited to continue to grow what we call our WMS family as part of our Jain Agricultural Services here.
Yeah. So great. That's good to hear. Now, I think you have some slides you wanted to share with us as well.
Yeah, definitely. We're kind of coming down to the wire here, so we want to make sure that we go through these pretty quickly, so that way we don't get too far spread here. All right, perfect. So I'm going to be looking over here because I have a second screen, so I apologize. So a lot of this data that you're going to be seeing is coming off of Jain Logic, which is part of our water management services. So feel free to go back to the Jain Logic, the irrigation training series, and look at some other webinars if you want more detailed information on some of this information, or some of this data, I should say. So talking about some of the ways that we're going beyond just the irrigation recommendations, this image right here that we're seeing on the screen is actually a satellite image of one of our growers' fields. And this is telling us information on the vigor of the field. And obviously green is good. That means that the field is vigorous, but red means that it's less vigorous. We can see that a very large portion of the field has dropped in vigor for whatever reason. And most likely, or not most likely, but what we have seen from time to time is that if flushing practices aren't practiced regularly and correctly, we can actually see that we'll see patterns of dropped vigor like this out in the field, because the grower might be thinking, okay, I'm putting on 8 hours of water out there, but if this half of the field's lines are plugged, it might be more realistically like they're getting 6 hours worth of water during that 8 hour time period, for example. So I really like that example.
Yeah. So in this this hyperview, the vigor hyperview, this is something that the growers get You explain it, you work with them on it as part of the service.
Correct. Yep. That's part of the service. And anybody who also signs on with just regular Jain Logic receives the same treatment when it comes to training and follow-ups as well. They just don't receive that weekly recommendation.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah. So kind of going along that same theme, talking about pressure here. So what I have on the screen here is 2 screenshots of pressure sensor data time stamped at 2 different times in the season. So we can see right here on the graph at the beginning of the season, we can see that at first we were operating at 22, almost 23 pounds of pressure, which is what that's that normal operating range for that system. And as time progressed and the system wasn't flushed and cleaned properly, we can see that recently another data point was captured here. We can see that that pressure has now been halved, which is major information from just one little sensor out in the field. We can see that we're putting twice the amount of work on our system than we were at the beginning of the season, and we're having to probably irrigate longer to be able to meet those demands out in the field. So from one little sensor, we can gain a lot of information from that.
Yeah. Yeah, very interesting.
Yeah, so this we can see here, I have it highlighted towards the end of the season when we started changing our irrigation practices. We were actually able to get more penetration into the soil. So we can see that each one of these lines here that rises up is actually more moisture being accumulated per depth. So by irrigating in more of a pulse fashion, we were able to penetrate deeper into the root zone that we were targeting. And we wouldn't have found that unless we had a soil moisture probe and a pressure sensor out there letting us know, hey, how long are you irrigating for? And then how efficiently is that irrigation being applied?
Yeah, I love that visual. That's the view nobody else gets. So, and I think Connor has locked up again, but I did want to let everybody know that we'll be sending everybody a copy of this Lunch and Learn, as well as Connor's information of how you can get a hold of him if you're interested in signing up for the water management services for next year. You know, we're very interested in taking on more customers at this time. We certainly have the capacity, and I think as you heard from our customers today, we have the success too. So look for that email later on this afternoon. If you have additional questions, please reach out to Connor or myself, and we'll be happy to take those. And I want to say thank you to Connor for joining us today, and thank you to all of you for tuning in. We really appreciate that. And remember that we have all our trainings, all our Jain Logic and Water Management Services training at the Jain's website at jainsusa.com/trainings, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. And again, if you have some ideas for things you'd like to learn, subjects, things you'd like us to cover, feel free to email me that information as well, and we will be sure to cover it. So again, thanks very much. I hope everybody has a good rest of the day, and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you.